Good evening, Valeriy Viktorovich.
Good evening.
Good evening, dear viewers, listeners, and guests in the studio. Today is March 30th, 2020. As we know, on March 25th, Vladimir Putin
Владимир Владимирович Путин, государь,
appealed to the citizens of Russia regarding the issue that has touched all of us. I'm quoting here. Putin spoke about many issues in his speech, and in particular, the first question that you have been asked to comment on, Valeriy Viktorovich. Why did Putin ask everybody to self-contain at home?
Why did Putin announce a one-week holiday? Yes, that question is on the surface. I have said many times that coronavirus is a big spectacle of a planetary scale. So why take part in this burlesque and announce a one-week holiday? Coronavirus, COVID-19, is nothing more than a seasonal mutation of acute respiratory viral infection. But there is a principal and completely different issue of social, economic, military, and political situation. We have already discussed that all coronavirus activity worldwide is caused by the fact that suprastate governance, the global predictor, decided to use this pandemic spectacle to achieve certain goals in world governance. Over the centuries, the global predictor have realized that any epidemic changes the world. Accordingly, there is a desire to change the world towards predetermined parameters, because natural epidemics change the world in unpredictable ways, and those changes need to be corrected later. But it is one thing to execute corrective measures under conditions when renewal of information on social level takes place slower than renewal of information on genetic level. And it is a completely different thing when renewal of information on the social level goes multifold faster than renewal of genetic information. Accordingly, there is a deficit of time when there is not enough time for corrective measures towards the world changes. In the case of a natural pandemic, that means one has to create a situation when one controls that process in full. But one has to understand a simple thing. In governance, there is always a discrepancy between planned and actual results. As soon as one executes a governing maneuver, conducts a governing act towards a system, the system's condition changes, and the entire supersystem's transformation immediately follows it. In the case of human society on the planet Earth, it involves the entire complex social supersystem. Accordingly, feedback is taking place. An object resists changes. Other players of similar global caliber attempt to use objective circumstances to achieve subjective goals. If one actor designed pandemic as a big spectacle to conduct a drill in order to perform some actions, to correct economics, reformat governance processes, and create a new center of governance concentration, then other actors, represented, for example, by the US country elite, are planning to keep their dominant position in the world and use coronavirus to prolong Pax Americana. i.e. to remain a parasite on the whole planet Earth. In this regard, we know that in the United States there is a severe confrontation between the global elite and the US country elite, a very tough confrontation. Regardless of assigning Trump and the Clintonoids opposing him either to globalists or to the US country elite, it is obvious to everyone that the fight between the US country elite and the global elite is taking place. The future role of the United States in the world is the main point of the infighting. But if Trump and the global elite conduct meaningful politics and understand the consequences of certain actions, the US country elite behaves out of control, like if there is no tomorrow. According to the scenario of the spectacle that was taking place worldwide, Trump should triumphantly announce, "We have no problems, we are the best. America is great again." That should have been supported by a global health security index that reported in 2019 that the United States was the most prepared country for a pandemic. But the United States is not a monolith in terms of governance. The states with Democrats representing the US country elite, dominating in governance, immediately began to say, "You, Trump, don't understand anything. There is a catastrophe, total catastrophe. We have a coronavirus epidemic too." So the United States became involved in this spectacle, and there was a necessity to play by new rules, or to be more accurate, to react to a new situation when the US country elite is trying to use objective circumstances to achieve its subjective goals. They didn't create this process of the coronavirus pandemic, but they decided to use it to their own ends. They declared to the world and Trump that the United States also had a coronavirus epidemic. Accordingly, Trump had to react. What did he do? He started an attack and said, "How did you, the US country elite, so incompetently let that happen? You let that full chaos happen. Epidemic damage to the United States is a result of your governance." I have pointed out this change in Trump's behavior on purpose. Changes took place in all countries because the global player of the superstate level stepped up trying to solve its governance tasks, acting by the principle, use objective circumstances to achieve your subjective goals. In other words, the US country elite decided to save Pax Americana no matter what. They are playing hardball. And how the world is reacting to that? Right now, all responsible state leaders are trying to make their people stay at homes. In India, people were put at homes by force, by bamboo sticks beating. Why is that so? Let's take a look at world events. China began to blame the United States for using biological weapons towards their country. In other words, the United States is being presented to the public view as a subject who organized this world pandemic. What did Putin say? Putin said that now it was the time for people to protect themselves, their loved ones, exercise discipline, and exhibit responsibility. What was his exact phrasing? Trust me, the safest action now is to stay home. It is a very direct and concrete statement. What is it all about? It is not by accident that China made a statement blaming the United States for using biological weapons against it. In the United States, there is a fight between the US country elite and the global elite to the death. And this deadly struggle is being spread to the Russian territory because American lackeys in Russian governance are ready to destroy Russia just to be useful for the US country elite. Let's remember Medvedev's government that was going to destroy the country, and for that exact purpose Alexander Voloshin came back into state governance at the finalizing stage. This plan was neutralized at the last moment. Have a look how busy Mishustin's government is, which has to diffuse all these negative actions that were undertaken for prepared destruction of the Russian state by Medvedev's government and still are being realized today. How is it being done? For some reason, many think that infighting between different clan cooperative groups can be only in the United States, but not in Russia. But in fact, such infighting is taking place in Russia. And a big part of the government's body of Russia is engaged in the destruction of Russia and serving the United States. That means that the goal of the state governance should be not to allow American lackeys to accomplish that. Why do I talk about it? Our quote-unquote partners, Anglo-Saxons, are very simple folks. If some nation lives on the territory that contains quote-unquote American petroleum or some other resources, then this nation must disappear. What did Trump say about Syrian oil? We will be safeguarding Syrian oil from Syrian people because we like this oil and we need it. In general, they always act very simply. For Anglo-Saxons to use biological weapons against some people, it is a piece of cake. Let's recall Churchill, who said that it was normal to use biological weapons against inferior nations. Russians always were on that list. Russians for the West is an inferior nation at best, if people at all. Let's take World War I. Remember chemical attacks? A question arises. Are chemical attacks possible against us, Russians? Definitely yes. Why? Chemical attacks were possible in Europe, Japan, and the United States. Plague and smallpox-infected blankets were given out to Indians, and they were dying as a result of the epidemic. Why can one expect Russians to be exempt from being a biological weapons target? Such weapons can be used against us, and we even know by whom. Remember, the United States sent endospores of anthrax by mail. Just recently, a clinic in Novosibirsk received an envelope with a warning of anthrax being inside. That was the test. Let's recall how our so-called partners organized in 1979 anthrax outbreak in Sverdlovsk. Some are trying to blame the Soviet Union, but there is evidence of the United States' involvement. It was a biological weapons attack against the civilian population of the Soviet Union. All American lackeys are crying out that it was the Soviet Union's fault, trying to protect their master. So, here's the situation. The United States never hesitated to use biological weapons. What is the most urgent task the United States is facing? To create mass destabilization, to bring down Russia as a factor of global politics, and save the domination of the American country elite worldwide. What do we see now? Coronavirus pandemic. The obvious condition for usage of biological weapons. Accordingly, state authorities have to create such conditions that biological weapons couldn't be used against the civilian population. That is why there are such severe measures in India, for example, where people were forced to stay at home and to prevent uncontrolled gathering of people. And Putin is right, saying, exercise discipline. It won't be the end of the world for you if you stay at home. But let intelligence services prevent catastrophic turn of events. Did you notice that postal service was not operational for 3 days? There is only one explanation. When intelligence services know the subject of the terrorist act, the method of the terrorist act, and the object of the terrorist act, 3 days are necessary to quickly remove those postal parcels, and no one notices anything, and life will go on as usual. Everything is being done to protect the population of the country from the biological weapons. To avoid any pandemic of some infectious disease. Accordingly, Putin is right by asking to exercise discipline and for some time stay home. Don't go to movie theaters, shopping centers, where objectively biological weapons can be deployed, and give intelligence services a chance to purge those who are ready to use this weapon. So this is the situation. We have to stay at home. One simple thing must be understood. The war against Russia has not been cancelled, and in this war, whatever means necessary are good. It doesn't mean that one has to panic, to be scared, to step out, and so on. No, right now it is just necessary to defuse the situation, to prevent mass gathering of people. The enterprises of crucial importance are protected, but uncontrolled mass gathering must be cancelled. That was the message of Gasudar's speech about a one-week holiday, where Putin asked to exercise discipline, maturity, keep oneself and one's families safe, and not to let catastrophic turn of events. One just needs to stay at home. One just has to understand and take care of oneself and his Loved ones, one needs to understand that the threat is very real. It is not quarantine. A quarantine, if necessary, will be a much rougher endeavor. Right now, it is a slap on the wrist. Just be with your family at home, which our work schedule and chaotic rhythm of life today prevents us from. So don't panic, don't throw tantrums, keep composure, stay calm, and avoid mass gatherings. It is unacceptable when people gather in big crowds in parks or somewhere else. It is absolutely irresponsible. People, do you need to be put on real quarantine to protect you? The epidemic itself is not more serious than seasonal flu, but attempts to use this situation to reformat world governance, which is done by the global elite through the coronavirus pandemic spectacle, is deadly dangerous, because the US country elite and American lackeys in any country want to turn it to a real pandemic. They don't understand that they will die themselves as a result of it. We, of course, will go to heaven.